Okay, we are winding down the year of Old Testament Bible reading, and we are following a few threads this week as we get to the end of the history and the prophecy as given to us in the Old Testament. And so we're going to talk about Zechariah and Ezra and Esther and see what it is that we'll be looking at in the reading for this week. Okay, Zechariah 9 to 14 is honestly some of the most difficult material in all of the Old Testament. There's just a lot of confusing things. It's cryptic. It's uncertain what all is in view and what specifically is being said and looked forward to in these chapters. And so, whenever you come across a section like this, it's best to look for the big things. Look for the big themes that have been constant through all of the prophetic books in the Old Testament. And I think we'll also benefit in these chapters from looking for the specific images that look forward to Jesus and his work of salvation. Okay, so one of the themes we've seen all throughout is the rebellion of the people, the collapse of the people. This is a people, Zechariah says, that are doomed for slaughter. And the image of the shepherd, which we have seen before in books like Ezekiel, for instance, is important in this. Because at first we see that the shepherds of the Jews, the leaders, are condemned for being bad shepherds and for harming the people and not helping them. But as this section of Zechariah continues, the imagery of the shepherd is used again to say that Zechariah is given the charge, symbolically by God, to be a shepherd for his people, and yet even he is rejected. So even the good shepherd of God's people, the people don't want that, and so they bring this doom upon themselves. But this really will be the turning point when, as the end of chapter 12, God says that they will look on him, they will look on God, on him whom they have pierced, and they will mourn for him as they mourn for an only son. And so the picture is that in rejecting God, that rejection will be the cause of the salvation going forward. So chapter 13, immediately after this, it says a fountain is opened in Jerusalem, and the rest of the book, chapter 13 and 14, is the picture of restoration, again, that we are familiar with from other prophetic passages. Okay, so a lot there. Just stick to the things that are easier to understand. But remember that Haggai and Zechariah both had the general charge of prophesying so that the people would restart the building of the temple, which they had stopped due to both opposition and apathy. And so we go read then in Ezra in chapters 5 and 6, that should say, not 1 to 4, but in chapters 5 to 6 that we're reading this week, the work resumes, the temple is finished, and finally, for the first time in many years, the Passover is kept. And the people have rededicated themselves to that work, and clearly God is working providentially on their behalf. Okay, that then brings us to the book of Esther, the first 6 chapters of the story we are reading this week. Esther is a very strange book in that in this whole story that's being told, and this is another king or two later in the history in Persia. We're not in Israel. We're still there with the Jews that are living in Persia. And yet God's name is never mentioned in this book. And yet it is so clear through all of the bizarre occurrences in Esther. And it is supposed to be humorous. And it is supposed to be, in many ways, making fun of the king of Persia, who is acting like he's so powerful, but is depicted as kind of a bumbling drunk in many ways. And Haman, who is this typical arrogant, boastful villain who is also very petty, and his own pride leads to his destruction. And Mordecai and Esther, the scheming good guys that are working not always, it seems, in the most honorable way, but working to bring about this certain outcome. And all of that that's happening in this story, God is the one that's working behind the scenes. Even if his name isn't mentioned, it's clear that he's the one pulling the strings. And so even in the famous passage when Mordecai tells Esther, look, God is going to deliver his people. It doesn't say that name in this text, but deliverance is going to come somehow. The question is, will you be a part of that or not? Will you step up and take opportunity that you have to help your people to be saved? Well, the point is, it's going to happen. God is providentially taking care of his people. The story of Esther shows some of the specific people that allowed themselves to be used to accomplish God's purposes. Okay, we'll finish the book of Esther and the book of Ezra and get into Nehemiah next week, but that's week 48. So thanks for watching this week's Bible reading video.